peace. It will come. But listen, it will be a deceptive peace. It will be the most subtle and the most deceptive trap that's ever been set, because it'll catch the world in it, and they'll be caught and they'll be destroyed.
There's a lot of propaganda, nonsense in a sick sort of way, practically implanted all over the planet. We're seeing signs of the plans they've enacted, the ones they've infected. Media connections, implanted messages with music, movies, a hit from all directions. Black evil masses is what they practice in the fast lane, selling the souls abracadabras. Witchcraft and magic, and new age cannabis to truth. Manufactured in their package, blasphemous reactions without remorse or regret. Through their thoughts or their actions, spiritual affliction, receive the more consequences. All these massive repercussions, a war of attrition. People plagued by infections, demons who torment and possess them. How do they select them? Through permissive meditations. Some give their bodies without questions, planned out deceptions. Many doorways to select from, maybe alien abductions or Ouija board connections. Hypnotic or regression, spirit guide visitations or Kundalini yoga lessons. Demons use these inventions, planting seeds of oppression. How can we know what's fact from the fiction? Caught in a world full of disinformation, wolves in sheep's clothing, imitations. How will you know without a foundation? How can we know what's fact from the fiction? Caught in a world full of disinformation, wolves in sheep's clothing, imitations. How will you know without a foundation?
Truth movement, where's the rage at? Top guys dealing out lies, it's a new age track. Tiserion Nike, Maxwell and Joseph, looking to deceive. They're occultists and hopeless, we got no discernment. This research is hijacked, esoteric disinformation is behind that. I spit flows, exposing these fake wolves. New age Blavatsky clones, Christ warned of a new age, one world government, twisting his message and their followers are loving it, drifting from salvation, from sin and the solution. Christ became a new age sage, toxic pollution, dudes out to deceive you as peaceful watchmen. They want to mislead you with the secret doctrine, but I'ma preach Christ crucified. Take a stand for the man they want to see Christ crucified, but that's not happening. Repent and believe, stop trafficking. This Aquarian trash again, total depravity. These wolves are in need of God's grace. Don't be mad at me, dose of reality. Give the gospel, the movement needs it. They've all been scammed, all of them by the Gnostics. Can't you see it? Truth movement take over in full effect. Open your eyes to these lies and clean up the mess.
How can we know what's fact from the fiction? Caught in a world full of disinformation, wolves in sheep's clothing, imitations. How will you know without a foundation? How can we know what's fact from the fiction? Caught in a world full of disinformation, wolves in sheep's clothing, imitations. How will you know without a foundation?
Yo, from boys to men, from men to lords, from toys to pens, from pens to swords, womb to the tomb, cradle to the grave. Doom indeed loom, leave my fable in a cave. They worship Lucifer each night, priests of darkness that preach light. Trying to teach fright with speech trite, but I'm true grit like the first division on Omaha Beach fight. This worldly system's days are numbered, waiting I'll wander the wilderness until my ways are humbled. Behold a pale horse, study the hidden past, which apocalyptic horsemen's mounts ridden last. The political is the spiritual to the analytical. Think critical, remedy a knowledge basis that's pitiful. Or why would I ever respect your formation and stance when research is foreign to your nation of rants? Chasing slave labors at the pace of the ants, never realizing at best all you're facing is chance. Your ignorance is bliss with the elation of trance. Look beneath the surface of your vision's foundation is glance. New age charming you with subtle application of chance. You puppets represent utter supplication of dance. What's burning in this furnace? Remove pride from your discernments. Reflections on self like the burnished. As for righteousness, to us all tools were furnished. Yet it seems the only ones who can have already learned this. Some sip a toxin that can kill 100 oxen. Adoption of false doctrine like they had no other option. Mankind was stabbed in the back by Satan's blade. Fools can't see, only God leaves legacies too great to fade. A rat race enslaved. You're lost and soon you'll be too late to save, and your ultimate fate's a grave.
How can we know what's fact from the fiction? Caught in a world full of disinformation, wolves in sheep's clothing, imitations. How will you know without a foundation? How can we know what's fact from the fiction? Caught in a world full of disinformation, wolves in sheep's clothing, imitations. How will you know without a foundation?
Okay, welcome you guys. I appreciate the big crowd tonight. This is exciting to me because this is more people than ever come on, but that's all good. Like, I love it. The more the better. This is a good time for this type of show because I have been in a bit of a funk, and I bet a lot of us have been in a bit of a funk because we're going to talk about this. I have Nick on tonight. I'm going to introduce him. This is Nick Hiteshew. I believe I said that right, but he'll tell me and if it was so wrong. But Nick has done some behind the scenes work, and specifically as oversight for the Disaster Network. So he worked in Katrina, and he can tell you what else. But where he comes in with good information, guys, is he has worked alongside a lot of these people. He's worked alongside of a lot of government officials. He's gotten to see when martial law has been called in certain places. And what I really appreciate about Nick is that in my frustration with what's going on, I hit him with some serious concerns, some serious bad attitude, because I was so frustrated with what I was seeing. And he put it into great perspective for me, taking it very personally. But he's had some great insight, and he's going to bring us that insight and information. So unmute yourself, Nick, if you would, and come on and talk to me if you're around. I'm sure you must be, but he's here. I saw him in the chat. There he is. All right, go ahead and start talking.
Can you hear me?
I sure can. I'm so glad you're here.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate you inviting me. And you did say my last name correct. Great job, by the way.
Oh, good.
I know it's a little confusing, but if you say it, you look at it, you say it, it comes out right.
Well, I introduced you that way because, Nick and I have talked for a while, you guys. This is not a new conversation, but, he, like I said, he took the brunt of some of my frustration, and I'm really appreciative because he's really been a voice of reason, especially today. So first, I want to will you just give us a little bit of the background that you can on what you've done and where you've been, and, just like a quick bio.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first major disaster I ever responded to was Hurricane Katrina. And we came in right after what they called it lifted the veil. They started letting volunteers in. That means that's kind of like third phase. They're moving into supplies and recovery. And I'll explain those phases in a little bit. The one that we really went big on was where Wilmington Response became a thing was Hurricane Harvey. I've also responded to the Tuscaloosa tornado. That got really strange as well. And now that I'm where I am in life and I understand why it did, I'll touch on that in a little bit too. And then the most recent one that affected us personally was actually Hurricane Florence. That was a big one that hit the North Carolina area where I actually live now.
Is that your bio, or did you cut out?
No, I got a text. Sorry.
That's okay. Just got to make sure.
But yeah, my big specialty in disaster relief is supply logistics, coordination, and I do a lot of oversight. I've got a lot of friends and a lot of personal contacts in a lot of different agencies. A lot of these volunteer networks, it's a whole network that works sometimes together and sometimes not. And things get rolling, people ask questions, and I try to answer those questions. Whether it's timelines, whether the agency's doing what it's supposed to do, just trying to figure out what exactly happened. There's a lot to disaster relief. There's a lot of it's a very complex network, to be honest with you. And yes. So when we were in Katrina, we actually kind of got adopted by
Hey,
the National
sorry,
Guard.
2 seconds. I made a mistake and didn't unmute myself because I was being silly. Well, all I asked you guys was that he's seen some things behind the scenes, like martial law being called in certain areas that we didn't even know happened. That's all I said. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so in Katrina, we actually kind of got adopted by the National Guard. And we started working literally for them. They were telling us what to do, and we did it. Some of the things we did seemed pretty silly, from trying to dig out a boat marina so they could launch boats off of there to go down to areas that were stranded to help them out. That was very fruitless, by the way. That failed miserably. But somewhere about I was there for 3.5 weeks, and somewhere around about the first week that I was there, Bush actually came in. President Bush at the time came in and did a speech and actually declared that it was federal martial law. And what that means, that a lot of people don't understand, is the National Guard and the military is now the law, meaning they're above the police, they're above everybody. That's one thing that is very important to understand, because where everybody gets concerned that the government is coming in to take over, that was a very strange point. But the reason that we were declared federal martial law, and the statement that stood behind that during the Katrina event, was literally we were fighting with FEMA to get supplies out to the people. There was so much discommunication there, and it was such a mess. Nobody knew what was going on or what to do. And so what he said was literally, I don't care what it takes to get the job done. If FEMA stands in your way, take names and get the job done, and we'll deal with that later. But if one of you guys does anything to harm anybody, I will deal with you personally myself. And it was to just get whatever we had to do, whether it was commandeer a boat, commandeer a building to stay in, because it was such a nasty mess, and the logistics were so horrendous. The communication was nowhere to be. I mean, the communication was almost nothing. It was kind of a joke, because we were given a name, and when we'd arrive at the next post, we had to use that name as like a secret code word, and they realized that you had talked to somebody official and you could go on further, or they could give you information or give you a task and send you into the field to go do what you needed to do. It was absolutely crazy. And then Harvey was actually a much better response from the nation. During Harvey, we had a lot more communication. The National Guard was there. They were there to support. They did not have any kind of martial anything, any kind of true authority. And similar to what you've seen take place in today's event, with this pandemic, is what they're doing. Logistics, supplies, coordination, backing up the police departments. And now, as Trump said today, they'll be running a hospital in, I think, New York. They said that they're going to actually be running and manning the hospital there with National Guard and military members. That's very similar to what happened in Harvey, and Harvey was executed very well. We were able to work as a volunteer group with the military, giving them the supplies to transport to where it needed to go, avoiding a lot of legalities and liabilities that a lot of people don't understand exist in this stuff. For instance, one thing, you've heard a lot about the N95 mask. N95 masks, we use them every day to muck out a house, in disaster relief, and we use them every day for construction and painting vehicles, etc. It literally was, up until this point, illegal to use them in the medical field. The science actually showed that they were very good at taking, and eliminating the microns, etc., the bacteria and viruses, but it was illegal to use them. What that means is, if I put a mask on and I'm treating somebody for a medical purpose, and either that person I was treating gets worse, or I get sick, somebody can be sued. Either I can be sued from the patient, or if something happens to me, I can sue the hospital or the medical facility that I happen to be voluntarily working outside of. That's another situation that has to be removed from the equation. And that's when they say that the FDA finally went ahead and approved it. That's one of the reasons there's so many issues, though, with disasters of any kind and pandemics. All those laws that are meant to protect people, there's a lot of people out there that just they want to see an angle that they can take advantage of it and make money off of it.
So, speaking of some of this concern that some of us have, and one of them being mine, was listening to a guy get up in front of, he was with Trump at one of these announcements, and he said, hoarders, you need to give up your stuff or we'll come and take it. And that got a lot of what you might call libertarians upset, and preppers and someone like me. And you had something really good to say about that. And if you just kind of say what you said earlier about libertarians, and do we need to be worried that some of us preppers are going to have to share with other people? And I will say we should share if we can, but don't kill yourselves over it. That's all I wanted to add.
Yeah, no, I understand exactly what you're saying. And being somebody who preps myself, and being I have a warehouse here with supplies, that was a question asked to me by my teammates. And no, what that means is, okay, so like Puerto Rico, I'm sure everybody that's following today, everybody is aware of the thousands of bottles of water that were found on the runway in Puerto Rico. And I'm sure by now everybody's seen the warehouses that they found in Puerto Rico with water and diapers and food in. What happens a lot of times in disasters is two things. One, nefarious people steal, divert, or just absorb a bunch of supplies with intent of either selling it, or they want to do some kind of media hype and some kind of drama, or you've got people that panic buy. And for instance, I think I heard, and I haven't verified this, so don't hold me to this, but I think I heard that a governor bought like 300,000 or 3 million N95 masks, and they went in and they're like, look, you're never going to use all of these. We're going to leave you with what you need. We're going to buy what you don't, and we're going to distribute it. That's the type of level of hoarding they're talking about. They're not talking about our personal stashes. As a matter of fact, Vice President Pence, he actually said that. We're not talking about you guys with your personal stash, although if you've got some to give, please give them. We could use them on the medical, give them to your hospital. If you can't, we understand that. We're not coming for your personal stash. That is literally like people that are hoarding, that are in the supply chain right now today.
Well, especially like the context, what you see is the context of what I saw was, we're going to take your stuff. And I didn't do any investigating on it because I'm in my own personal feelings, because I'm frustrated and I'm like, just another thing to add to the list of stuff I'm frustrated with. And, and pretty soon I'm sitting here going, I got to get off the grid immediately. And I'm going into this mindset that I told myself not to go into when I first started learning all this stuff. When I first started learning all this stuff, I said, okay, just because I learned it today doesn't mean the end is tomorrow. And I've got to get crazy and get off the grid. And I keep reminding myself I have to just continue to do what I'm doing, continue to live and grow my garden and do all these things that the Lord has been doing for me because I asked to be more self-sufficient. And I brought up libertarians earlier, and I thought it was interesting. We don't have to talk about it if you don't want, but I thought it'd be good to for you to express what you say about libertarianism, because I found myself starting to call myself one, but listening to you, I don't think that's a good idea.
In everything, you've got to do the research on the root. The old saying, you can't judge a book by its cover, is so true. And that goes with everything. If you ever want to really know the truth about something, you've got to look at it all the way through, and I have. And unfortunately, I feel that the Libertarian Party is not a good entity. Do I fight for liberty every day? I don't think the Libertarian Party fights for liberty in the same way as I do. I fight for freedom, for everybody to have a much better life. I've seen what happens in countries where anarchy becomes the rule of thumb, such as Honduras and South America, period. You end up with a dictatorship that's ran by the cartels and ran by the other side, and it's not a good thing. And so when you start looking at what those parties start talking about, you know, they're talking about things like removing the age of consent law. What good does that do to any human being? Now we're talking about child marriages. That's just completely off. The police, period. How does that do any good for mankind? Yes, I understand all the controversy, and with former presidencies, with the police department being absolutely out of control. But you got to have an equal balance there. You really do. You know, like in South America, we have some, we've had some interesting conversations. We'll just say that. And somebody once told me this is the motto. And their motto is government is business, crime is business, and business is business. Which one of the three do you choose to do? Now we're no longer talking about liberty because we're talking anarchy, and we're talking about now we can just do whatever we want to do, including human trafficking.
Right.
And who's going to stop us because police don't exist?
Right. That's a good point. Not trying to derail the conversation, but if you didn't finish saying what you were going to say, finish, but was there more you wanted to say on that?
No. If there was anything else, and if there's anything that anybody asks me, by all means, please say in the chat. I can't have both up on my phone, unfortunately.
No, it's distracting for you though, because you're going to be doing more of the talking to try to read any of the questions. Somebody did ask a question. Brooke asked a question about if you knew. Hold on. She said there was engineered storm at the time of the Christchurch shooting, something about engineered storms and the dam in Phoenix was apparently going to burst. Do you know anything about that and going on at the time of the stuff in New Zealand?
I don't specifically know anything about that. However, I will say if she's speaking of, is she talking about the time frame in December? If she is, one of the things that I do is I look for common points of data. And one of the things that struck me as very odd during that time frame was you had the first ever major earthquake in Puerto Rico. And simultaneous to that, on the other side of the globe, literally, if you turn the globe over, is Australia. And Australia had several earthquakes and storms, and then they also had the major fires over there. And so I do definitely agree that HARP exists and HARP has been used, and a lot of things are not necessarily what we think they might be. I don't know that all storms are engineered, but I have definitely seen a lot of data that definitely proves there's a lot of storm engineering going on.
My question is, do you think this is a real virus?
So, again, going back to data. First of all, as anybody knows, in anything that you want to pull off, the best way to do it is keep the group small. Whether it's good or it's bad. It's kind of like the telephone game. If I tell you something in your ear and you turn around and you pass it to the person and you pass it to the person and it goes on, by the time it gets to the end of the chain, you'll be lucky if there's one word that I actually said in whatever it is that person said. And the same thing goes on when you've got a bunch of different personalities in something. So when I look at the data and I see that globally there's reports on a major virus, and then I start seeing data that shows something odd. The flu spike in October and November, or November, December, I think it was. And my mother, she actually brought that one to my attention that, you know, there was reports coming out of thousands of people dying of the flu this year, 2019, 2020. And it didn't make sense. And then I start researching the data there, and I see this spike, this very large spike of a flu. And then I start researching that a little bit. It's called a flu-like illness. So I researched what is COVID, or what is coronavirus. And coronavirus, you know, first of all, I wanted to look into what the novel part meant, and that was just kind of the shape of the virus. So I researched what is coronavirus and the symptoms of. And it's related to Mars, and it's related to SARS, and it looks like a flu virus, but it also has a pneumonia. So then I reflect on people that I personally know. A very dear friend of mine in this town had a double, first it started out, I want to say like a double viral bronchitis that turned into a double pneumonia. Fortunately, he didn't die and he's better. But then everybody around him got really sick. And then at the same time, I own a small business here in transportation. At the same time that he gets sick, like this thing spreads through my entire company. I ended up with whatever it was as well. I was down for like 10 or 12 days. Very fever and everything else. It was I thought it was just a nasty cold virus, but it was a lot more symptoms to it. And so then I start researching what are people saying about coronavirus. And that's what they're describing. So my first thought is, yes, the virus is real. The data is not, the information that we're being told may not be 100% pure, or they just aren't able to release it yet. Well, I'm kind of watching it on my radar here since about December. But I've got, you know, my transportation business. We're getting ready for a busy season. Simultaneous to that, I'm doing some stuff with import-export. And all of a sudden, import-export just gets bizarre. It gets really complicated. Right at the time coming towards December when China really had their outbreak, I start, you know, having some problems getting stuff from there, and other people do too. I'm a problem solver, so people come to me when they have issues. I start looking at other countries that manufacture the same thing. India, I'm talking to Honduras, I'm talking to Russia, I'm talking to, I think Sweden was another one. And none of them are able to get these items we're trying to get. So then I start looking at other things, and somebody comes across my fly with N95 masks. It's the exact same thing. So I start talking to some of these manufacturers and kind of befriend them. And they come out and they tell me, look, this is a global government cooperative effort. They've kind of taken control of our supply chain of N95 masks because this problem is so severe. We have so many people that are so sick, we can barely even run our factories right now, and we can't ship nothing except to the areas that they tell us to. Now, this is coming into about the second week of January, maybe the third week of January. A lot of times, some of my major eyes in the field that they know I'm very busy with other things, whenever there's getting ready to be what we call a potential deployment, they start knocking on my door, so to speak, and they're like, Nick, get ready, Nick, get ready. You know, this is what's going on. You need to start, you know, getting prepared. Well, they start knocking on my door, basically, and they're telling me about this virus, and they've just gone through the FEMA training for pandemic and biohazard, et cetera, et cetera. About that time, a very close friend of mine, here in the last, I'll say 3 weeks, I want to say about the last 3 weeks, there's been so much stuff going on, I've kind of lost track of dates. But I want to say the last 3 weeks, he is at home. He just got in from an overseas trip, and he's home visiting his dad. And then he flies over to South Korea to see his son. His son is in the Army over there. And as he leaves, they announce South Korea is in lockdown, quarantine. So we're thinking this could get interesting because he's on the plane. Nobody has a way to tell him anything. And so he gets over there. And I want to say it's about a 16-hour flight, if I recall correctly, to go from the United States to there. His first day there, he said it was a ghost town. It was bizarre. He did some live video for us. Saw some horrendous things. They had the tents out in front. You had to go into the tent every day to get tested, et cetera, et cetera. Well, about the second or third day he's there, he tells us his dad just got meta-flighted to Duke University. And I was asking him, like, you know, what's going on with your dad? Like, he's like, I don't know, man. He's having a hard time breathing. And I started talking to him about it. And I asked how his dad's health was prior to that, and he said, fine. I mean, he's in his early 80s, I think he said he was, but his health was fine. And all of a sudden, he didn't know what was going on. So he pushed his trip up. He got the Korea and the embassy to go ahead and let him leave a week early because he's not supposed to be there anyway. It's under quarantine. He can only see his son like one day out of this whole planned trip to South Korea to spend time with his son who's in the Army. And comes home. I think this is 9 days now from the time that he left the United States. And it wasn't very easy for him to come home. He had to fly in through the CDC, get a battery test there. They put him on a plane, fly him home 24 hours after he gets here. Self-quarantine, monitor yourself, make sure you call us if you have any issues. And the day after he gets here, his dad is still in the hospital. His dad is in ICU. And not doing good at all, not very lucid. I mean, not doing good at all. He gets the hospital to go ahead and let him suit up, and he gets into a biohazard suit, and he goes sees his dad. And what he describes is absolutely horrendous. He was describing to me that, and this was a couple days later, that his dad had like this pus and this blood and this mucus so thick in the back of his throat that you could just pull it out. And him and the doctors were pulling this stuff out to be able to allow his dad to eat. And he lost his dad. It was about 11 days from the point of time that he left South Korea that he got back that his dad passed. So here we are about 2 weeks later, and he can't get a death certificate. So he's pushing hard on the state to find out what's going on. And they tell him that death certificate will be reclassified, and we're about 80% certain your dad died of COVID. And then I start looking at other data points and other people that I personally know. And then I start looking at what are nurses describing their experiences as. And they're describing exactly what this gentleman said. Now, this gentleman is not somebody who hasn't seen anything. He's a global minister, and he was telling me it was the worst thing he's ever seen in his life. And he has literally seen hundreds of people die of flu. I mean, you can pretty much name every single virus off. He goes, the only one I don't know if I've ever seen was HIV. He goes, I think I've seen somebody die of that, but I don't know for sure. But everything else, I've seen it. I've never in my life seen anything like this. And so, yes, the answer is I do believe that there is a real virus out there. I believe that it is as contagious as they say it is. I actually believe that, as we've read in some of the better countries that give us more accurate information, that it's been here since the president is actually starting to admit it, since somewhere around November, December. And if you look at some things that went on in Wuhan around that time, you've got those the Chinese Olympics out there. I think they're called the Chinese Military Games or something. And I believe it is something at that point in time that started this pandemic globally.
Okay, so I would probably agree that there's definitely a virus, but I also think it's been overblown and the shutdown has been overblown. And some of us are kind of frustrated because we don't think things should be shut down. And so then the next question is, if Trump is getting up there, President Trump is getting up there and saying, oh yeah, big deal, all scary, shut everything down, when we seen that, you know, we had a little girl die in my girl's grade school last year of the flu, and not one thing stopped for even a moment. I mean, maybe they took an hour off in the afternoon to reflect or something, but nothing stopped. The school didn't shut down. And so some of us are like over the top frustrated, especially our churches being 501c3, and it's causing like some real frustration. Can we trust what the president is doing with this situation? Can we trust him?
I can certainly understand and appreciate everybody's frustration. I'm just as equally as frustrated and confused. Being somebody who's literally fought for freedom all my life at multiple levels, whether it's and fought for justice, whether it's making sure a community that didn't get the supplies for some reason or another got the supplies, whatever the case might be. And so, you know, I'm also very well connected with the patriot movements, the militias around the nation, who are all just as equally on guard, I guess you could call it. We've been literally researching these bills, studying C-SPAN, connecting with as high up the food chain as we possibly can when it comes to our government connections. And as far as we can tell, this is a very real situation. It is very probable that a very high percentage of Americans have the virus, but it is also very real that there is a really high rate of recovery, really high. Vietnam actually spoke about that. If anybody's actually going back, and you got to dig, it's not very easy finding their news, but the leader of Vietnam was talking about how they treated it with very holistic, homeopathic, and natural remedies, including plenty of fluids, plenty of sleep, a good diet, and just being able to, you know, relax, to build up your immunity to recover from it. And they only tested the ones that actually ended up in the hospital as very severe cases. Essentially, that's what we're doing now, if you think about it.
The reason I ask is because, you know, people are confused. They feel like he's saying one thing and other things are happening. But I think you've done it, personally for me, a good job of explaining that. And I think there's a lot of good reason behind it. Like somebody in the chat, like Colodro says in the chat, that if he didn't, they're already trying to act like he's not doing enough. So if he just was like blowing it off and acting like it's not a big deal, then you know, it would look even worse for him. But, you know, a lot of people are seeing there's obviously going to be a problem with an economical crash during this, and that this is kind of a good chance to use a virus for the economy crash that we've been waiting to see. Or do you think that's not the case? Do you think we'll see the dollar go to zero and just have a total crash there? Or what do you think will happen on the other side of this?
I think this is going to be a moment in our lives that definitely should redefine us personally and as a society. I don't think this is going to be a dollar crash. I see a lot of signs that point the other way. One thing I told you, and I know you kind of got frustrated with me because for like 2 weeks, I couldn't be found anywhere. I spent a lot of time, as I always do, in prayer. just praying about saying, kind of like Glenn Beck said, I don't know what to think right now, but I feel good about this. I feel comfortable with this. I feel at peace, but I want you guys to pray for me to have the right direction. Well, that's what I had done for myself, and I'd asked other people to do. I really feel peaceful with where we're at today, and I really feel like we are going to be okay. It is going to be a climb uphill, but I also feel like this. People in about 2-3 weeks from now, when we're released, I guess you could say, are going to have the biggest case of cabin fever. By that time, all the economic logistics of getting the money into the bank accounts and the SBA loans and all of that is going to be fixed. And you're going to have a pocket load of money. And if you make wise decisions with that, you'll be able to invest that in your future. And the other thing is people are going to want to go out and they're going to want to do stuff, and they're going to have a huge sigh of relief. But they're also going to have a lot of people that are hurting out there. Although I do think it's going to be a lot less than what could be potential if we were just running the streets doing our own thing. If you look at the data point, Florida, right there at Panama City, where they had that big beach bash, right there at spring break, now has a massive outbreak. You look at, I want to say it's Lexington, Kentucky, I think, or Tennessee, the university there where the minister brought all the kids back to college, and all of a sudden they all started breaking out with it right after spring break, and now they've got a big problem there. I think there's too many things going on that it's too much to be just a coincidence. I really don't think you can manipulate that many people. I mean, you look at Sandy Hook, you have, maybe a quarter, a certain population point there of people that were supposedly there and seen it, but then you've got other people that were there and they said, I didn't see nothing. And you kind of got the same thing going on right now. You've got nurses in the hospitals saying they're overwhelmed. You've got nurses in other hospitals saying that they've got beds all over the hallway, but they're empty. And I think I think part of it might be a reaction to an overreaction to prevent a mental breakdown and a potential media spin. But I also think it would have been a dangerous game to not respond in any way, shape, or form, since you see areas that did not react in any way, shape, or form, did not make any preparations, that are just entirely overwhelmed with this virus now, like that area of New York there in Queens. And then you've got the area there in Washington. And they didn't do anything, and now all of a sudden it's just overtaken that whole little area. I think that we definitely have a real virus. I think it's very contagious. Although I do realize, it does have a very high recovery rate. There's also two viruses that a lot of people don't discuss. In any disaster, you've got the panic factor. I mean, how many times have you seen where people are trying to leave from a hurricane zone and there's just miles and miles and miles and miles of traffic, and people that are buying just amounts of water that they would not even be able to use inside of 30 days, and the toilet paper.
Yeah.
I can't even say that one without laughing. The toilet paper hoarding that went on here. I mean, and then I don't know if you've seen the article the other day. Americans have bought so many eggs I don't know if you want to call it pre-shutdown or whatever, that they wiped out the stockpile that was lined up for Easter.
Oh, yeah. Right.
I mean, it's just bizarre. People respond and react in so many weird ways when it comes to a situation or a potential situation. It's a very complex situation that I think the best thing for us all to do that they could see out of this whole thing is like, hey guys, stay out of the way for a minute. Let us figure this whole puzzle piece out. And if you look at several factors, okay, first of all, we have a non-federalized National Guard under state authority that is still backed by the federal government. So they still have to answer to the federal government for whatever actions they do. So that's a big sign of a peace movement. All right. Then you've got, the governors and the way the funnel's being lined up for the governors to actually be in charge. The mayors and the people below him just basically do what the governor tells them to do. And then you've got, like a perfect leverage point for, and I'm surprised they didn't try to do it, is that stupid gun ban bill that's up there. It's under some pretty name. But when you read it, it's a complete ban on anything that's not a revolver. That's what it is. You can't own a semi-automatic pistol, a semi-automatic rifle of any kind. It's illegal, according to that gun ban. They could have tried to point that in there, but he didn't. I think that's a good sign there. Also, you got Nancy Pelosi that tried to do the digitized currency for America, and I know that caught a lot of people's attention. And he's like, no, we're not doing that. That's stupid. And then you got the UN talking about doing another somehow world currency for them. And it's like, you have a lot of things going on around you, but I really don't think Trump is taking the bait on any of those. I've looked at those bills inside and out. There's a trick that happened during Hurricane Sandy. And a lot of people don't understand the anger that comes out of New York for Hurricane Sandy. But it's the way the governor took the money. See, he took it through the side of the unemployment that is a loan that has to be repaid to the federal government. And the way that they pay that is they tax the businesses. And it's a pretty significant tax because you got a short period of time to pay off this short-term loan. This wasn't done that way. This, first of all, has been done as a grant to the state. So the state will never have to repay it. And if you look at it, he's really setting things up to protect everybody. Even the $1,200 check that everybody's supposed to get, or $1,500, I forget the exact number on it, that is not done as a tax loan. Obama did it, but he did it as a tax loan. It was a tax credit. Trump said, no, we're giving this to the American citizens. Everything that's being done out there, including the one that for the SBAs that I think they called it the PPE, the Personal Payment Protection or something like that, personal payroll protection, something or other. Anyway, that one there, if I as a small business owner take it and maintain paying my employees, it turns into an SBA grant and it is forgiven as long as I prove I did what I'm supposed to with. So there's an accountability, but it's also to protect everybody. None of this stuff outside of one that I found very interesting was that the SBA, which, by the way, I love the SBA loans. They're one of the best loan programs out there. I'm not trying to be a salesman, but if anybody has a business and they can get one, do so. Because one of the things that's nice, it's a low interest rate, and it's for like 7 to 10 years. Well, if you double up your payments because you're only paying like a 3% interest, you're going to pay it off in 5 years. So, like mine, I got one during Hurricane Florence. I think it was $18,000, 3% interest rate, over 10 years, payments $180. That's a nice, comfortable loan to pay. And so it takes, and it really actually creates a lot more equality in the banking network, because you can go direct to your SBA now, and you can say, I want to get all my vehicles collateralized, and I'd like to put them under there. And as long as you meet those criteria, you can do that. Well, now the banks have to think about that. So when they try to, Wells Fargo or any of those other banks out there try to sell you a loan, they've got to take that into account. They have competition now. And it also enables a lot more people to be able to get those loans because they're collateralized. A lot of loans out there that aren't collateralized are very high interest and very short-term pay, and they're not good.
When you brought it up earlier about the loans, I said, well, I'm trying to teach people not to take out loans. So I'm glad you clarified for small business, because that's exactly right. Why there are instances where people need to take out loans. But again, I do talk about gold and silver a lot. And as a lot of you know, I push that because it's scriptural. It's been around for 5,000 years. In fact, somebody was talking to me about, it was on Facebook, about Bitcoin and how they're kind of excited to see how that goes. And people are still looking at the market and the stocks. And if you go to some of the experts, and one of my favorites is Mike Maloney, he says, we're at a point that is basically like what we saw before the Great Depression. And if we drop that low, a lot of these things are going to take decades to come back up to where your head is above water, even if you're buying low, because it's just going to be that long before it ever really takes off for you. Now, of course, if you bought at the very bottom of it and you had the money to do so, but most people wouldn't. But he even graphed it out, and he showed that if you were 25 years old at the time of the Great Depression and you bought into stocks when everything was dropping, it would have taken you 60 years before those stocks even got your head above water, especially with inflation and the drop of the dollar. And we know that gold and silver, it doesn't lose its value, but its only value is based on the dollar. The dollar's not backed by it anymore. But I love that you said that you mentioned the digital money that Nancy Pelosi was trying to introduce, because that was one of the things where I was like, phew, when that didn't go through. I was losing my mind over that. It was one of the things where I was like, here it comes. The mark is starting. And we could say that. There's a lot of people that are willing to say that. And there's nothing wrong with being concerned if this is end times. But let's talk about that real quick, and then we'll talk about 5G after that, okay? We're going to get to some of these things that a couple people have asked about that we already have planned to talk about. But one of the things is a lot of people are trying to describe and determine that we are in literal end times now, that Jesus is coming back anytime, and we should always be thinking like that. That's how we're supposed to live our lives. But the Bible also says we're supposed to continue working and doing our life the way we ever would. We're not really supposed to make decisions based on the fact that we think Jesus is coming back tomorrow or in 2024 or in 2050. But tell me what you think. You're a Christian, you've studied Revelation, and you've got a good idea, and you've got a good head on your shoulders. Tell me what you think about end times and where we are today.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And yes, I have spent a lot of time studying the Bible, and not just the Bible. I've studied it from a lot of different points of view, from different religions to different philosophies, different theologies, different everything. So, I have, some people consider it to be a unique, and I've had this since I was a child. First of all, going back to, you just said it a minute ago, the Bible says several things. One thing it says is study to show thyself approved. It never says, just all of a sudden, become. And the other thing that it talks about towards Revelation specifically is to have your lamp full. Always be prepared. And it also says one other thing, and this is one thing that I think everybody today that thinks that this is the absolute end of the line is off, because the Bible says he comes like a thief in the night, and not one shall know nor even suspect that time or that hour. And I think that's one of the things that a lot of people got to remember. And then there's also, as I told you, I consider it the greatest promise ever given to man. And it's really like a very big beacon of hope. And it says, when my people who are called by my name turn from their evil and wicked ways, then and only then will I heal their land. It doesn't say if. And so I have a hard time subscribing to the general theory of revelations and end times being like that timeline that we've always been taught in life, where you've got your beginning arrow and you've got your end, and that's the absolute end, and then you've got your middle point. I've always had a hard time believing that. And I kind of see it as more, I spoke to you earlier about it, like your kid's getting in trouble and he's in the basement, and you're like, stop it. If you do this, I'm going to have to come down there. And if you do this, this, and this, I'm really going to have to come down there. And I kind of see Revelations as being more of that moment and more of that time. That says, yes, there is a lot of pieces of Revelations here today. I understand that entirely. But I also feel this is a moment as a nation and as the globe to really sit there and focus on ourselves and reflect on our past and become stronger and better people as general and start helping more people and start doing and living more by the word as we're told to do. I spoke to you earlier about one of the things that bothers me a lot inside of these movements, I guess you could call them, is it's almost like people are worshiping whoever it is, whether it's you, whether it's whoever, and they're not even, they're almost taking bits and pieces of the word to fit whatever it is they want it to say. They're not looking at the totality of what the word is saying and realizing that if we look to man for leadership, they're going to fail us because they're man. We have to judge everything that they say and everything that they do by the word. And if we don't do that, then we're not any different than any other failed society that's existed.
Well, that's where a lot of my frustration has come in, because I'll see some of these what you call like Q deciphers, or I can't think of the word for some reason right now. So easy, but anyway, they're decoding. They're decoding all this stuff, and can you say what you said earlier, which I thought was great, because what we have to remember is that it's easy to look to other people to tell us what Q is saying. And it's not as easy to do some of the research, because in the beginning I did a lot of the research that Q pointed to, and I was excited about it. It was fun, and kind of as the time has gone on, I'm less excited about researching it, and I get more into that. And I'll admit to you guys, I've gotten more into that jaded kind of Q doesn't say anything. And this is what I appreciate about Nick, is he's put up with letting me vent to him about these things, and we've talked about him. But you said some really good stuff about some of the Q decoding, and one particular thing that you caught that might have been a mistake, and just to remember to, it doesn't mean Q is a bad thing to be a part of necessarily, as long as you keep your head on straight. And certainly there's I will admit there has been good information in there, because it's led me down rabbit trails that got me on the track that I am today. So I can't say that was a wrong thing, or it psyoped me somehow. But what would you say about that?
Well, first of all, there's, again, going back to the word. There's a word in there, a verse in there, and forgive me, I can't recall exactly what it says, but anything without moderation, it's not good. And I had to paraphrase it. Like I said, I can't remember the exact word. I'm sure you could probably Google it real quick and tell everybody exactly what verse it is. That's the problem. I think too many people kind of get obsessed with what it is, and they're focused on it, but then they start missing things. And my mom actually brought this up to me last night. There's one specific thing that I know was a part of the Q movement for a long time, and it was a post that Q did. I don't recall when, but it said darn Kess, DARNKESS, and then 333. Well, everybody just assumed that was a typo, and they made it darkness. And then it became darkness to light. But Q kept trying to tell everybody you're missing an N. Well, if you go and you actually Google Darnkest 333, you find a book on Amazon. And I'm only 16% into the book, because, like I said, this just started last night or the night before, and my mom told me about this. And it actually aligns a lot with kind of a very simple theory on Q. It talks about, one of the things he talks about is he was formerly in Army Special Forces. And then one of the other things that he makes light on is that he refers to a father, or he was a minister, but a father Flynn. Well, we know General Flynn is in the military, and we know that a lot of military lower ranks kind of look up to those generals as like a father figure. So what if you actually explored that book and really learned a little bit more about what Q is trying to tell everybody. First of all, do I definitely believe that there's a lot of nastiness in the world today? Yes. You know a little bit about my history. You know that I've seen a lot of things. Yes, I definitely believe there are definitely some evil things out in the world, and are most likely some pretty serious pedophilia rings out there. Do I think that that is the sole purpose of what this event that we're in today is? No, I don't. I definitely believe that this was, as Trump said, going back again to what they said instead of what we want them to say. Trump's talking about an attack on the United States, both economically and a virus. And I think that that is a lot more real and a lot more transparent than people want to think and people want to believe. I believe this was a deliberated attack to show the economy as well as to kill Americans. Who's behind it? I don't know. There's a lot of theories out there. There's definitely some that make sense. I've been watching the president's speeches, and I've been picking up on a lot of pieces. And certain times he drops out more than I think people realize. Yesterday he mentioned Iran, and he mentioned Kerry, the previous Senator Kerry. I think there's a lot more to that than people want to give credit to. First of all, who wants to believe that their former leaders might be part of something very evil? I can't blame them. I mean, that would mean the last how many decades of our lives would have been lies. And it would make a lot of things make too much sense if that was true. But you can't absorb yourself in that and lose yourself in that. Look at it, take the facts, understand the potential facts. We really need to focus. And I would caution anybody. I've seen a post the other day that said, draw them near to Q. I caution anybody that ever sees that and ever says that, because the only one that we should ever be drawing anybody near to and steering them to and pointing them to is God and Christ, and a better relationship with God and with Christ. That's really where we should be steering the ship and pointing everybody to.
Amen. And a lot of people are making money off of Q, and that's all they'll talk about no matter what. And I won't get into that because then I'll just sound like a hater. But I wanted to mention, you and I earlier talked about 5G, and you said some really good stuff that didn't occur to my little brain because it's so easy, like you said, and I want you guys to hear this. But one thing that Nick said to me is we are all, and I have admitted I have not handled this well. I'll be the first to say that Nick could have said, Aaron, I don't want to talk to you anymore because I don't like what you're saying to me, and it's not right, it's not true. But he let me bounce off my frustrations, which thank you for all the people that have. But I have taken this personally. I have made this about me because I'm frustrated about me and the things I have to change. And I see that. And every time I go into a store and I say, so my kids today, she goes, we don't have to follow these rules, right? Because we don't believe in it. And I actually said to her, I go, well, we do, because they are the rules, even if we agree with them or not, even if we don't think we need to stand 6 feet away, we have to do it. We can't. And I want to just barge into people's space, which is so funny because I'm the most antisocial person that never wants to get in anybody's space and never wants to talk to anybody. And I'd rather look at the floor than make eye contact at a store. And yet now I'm like, I want to be in everybody's space like a jerk. I'm just this rebellious person. And I'm thanking God for that. So we're going to talk about the pros about stuff like that. So I won't go on about that. But what you did bring up about 5G, I said, well, what about our freedoms? We're seeing some of our freedoms are being taken away. And what about this 5G? And if you'll talk about what you told me earlier.
Yeah, so first of all, I was after the conversation that we had the other day, I put up a post. I forget exactly how I worded it, but it kind of talked about that, what you were just saying there. But, it's like you said, 5G, we'll focus on that part first. So first of all, when has anybody ever known anything high quality to come out of China? I'm kind of dumbfounded that hasn't crossed anybody's mind. And if we know that the number one leader in the newer versions, we'll call it, of the 5G technology was Huawei, which was Obama phones. And I think we all know the whole fraud and the whole scam that went on with them stealing your information and your data and selling it to every telemarketer out there. If not, I'm sorry to drop a truth bomb on you, but that's what they were doing with your Obama phone when you had one.
Right.
We tried to let everybody know that, but I don't know if that got out everywhere. So if we look at it from that point of view, you've got an inferior company that does not respect privacy, that does not respect information. I mean, we're talking about a country, I want to say it was Switzerland, that had the Huawei 5G, and just by hitting a censor button, this is exactly what the article says, by censoring that bank,
able to shut down Switzerland's bank. Sorry, I got a phone call there. But they were able to shut down the banks in Switzerland by censoring them. First of all, there's some issues there. Secondly, I know we've all heard about the cancer. We've seen some trees dying and some weird things that we don't quite understand. Well, again, let's go back to that inferior quality. What if it was all that inferior quality? Some of us on the disaster relief and the patriot side of things, I know Aaron touched on the ham radio situation, Bofang. Bofang used to be made in the United States. Bofang used to be a very high quality radio. Well, the quality started going down. Somebody started testing it. They found out that the signal, the actual wattage, was much lower than what they were telling them. They started researching it. Bofang is made in China. It is no longer made in the United States. Bofang US does not exist. It's the same radio that comes out of Bofang, China. And so you look at those kinds of things and you see the lack of quality and the track record on the lack of quality. I mean, we had iPhones breaking up, iPhones that were exploding that were made in China. Samsung, I think they had phone issues that were made in China as well. So what if, in reality, by shutting out Huawei, removing Huawei, you've actually got a president in there that fixed that whole issue that coincided with the original 5G. And what you have now is actually an okay to use, filtered out version of 5G signal. Also touching on things that I watch, like I told you, I read the bills. I read the bill that Trump used. It granted two things. One, every telecompany out there has 60 days that they're allowed to use what they refer to as the spectrum or 5G. So during this crisis that we have, where we now have, I think 329 million American citizens, I don't know how many, let's say a third of the population is now stuck at home and can't do anything, maybe 2/3 even, is stuck at home and can't do anything. Everything depends on the internet, from our cell phones to our televisions, to our computers, some of our vehicles, our banks, everything. It depends on the internet. Now, going into a natural disaster, the internet is the first thing we count on going down. That's the first thing we count on going down. We pray that it doesn't, but we try to get everybody as a disaster's hit to go to the cellular side of things because we're hoping that that will last a little bit longer. And then we try to set up cell phone repeaters in a certain way. But if you had a third of the population in the United States, or even 2/3 of the United States population at home, and they burned out the old 3G, 4G, there would be so much panic, so much nationwide panic. They wouldn't know what to do. You have no communications, you have no television, you have no banks because the internet just went down. I mean, there's so much stuff on the internet. It's literally like the heartbeat of our society, unfortunately. I mean, we're in the biggest information era that we've ever been in. So by looking at the 5G, the other thing I found very interesting, people are watching this, the tracking. I know that's another thing people are concerned about. Well, if you actually go look at how The government is getting the data. The only data they're getting is a report on your movement. So the internet companies, the cell phone companies that are tracking our movements, that have our data already, are only giving our government those reports saying how well each county and each city is doing at staying home and being good, I guess you could say, following the presidential guidelines, so they can see the spread of the virus and see how the virus reacts in that manner. They're not actually seeing your location data and all of that. Now, that's not to say that they don't have a way to hear the communications, and that would be very expected, because as I talked to you earlier, this nation has never been so vulnerable, ever. If you think about it, it's so much easier to hide something in a crowd than it is when there's no crowd. That's why a lot of crime goes on, and a lot of these unsolved things are done in mass groups. It's harder to see them. Now you have, like we said, two-thirds of the population at home. It's a lot easier to actually see movement and be able to see what's going on. The only other issue with that is you've got a lot of police at home. You've got a lot of firemen at home. You've got businesses empty and abandoned. This nation's at a very vulnerable point. You've got our government effort trying to help us out with this pandemic. And, I was kind of actually talking to my mom about this a week ago. This would be, unfortunately, an opportune time for an enemy to plan an attack on us. And as you've seen, the president yesterday announced they were sending a military movement to our southern waters to defend us, because the cartel, something to do with Iran, and the cartels were planning an attack and planning to move a bunch of drugs and planning an attack coming from our southern border. That's real. Even at the lower level in a natural disaster, the enemy always exposes itself. We always have people that are out there trying to break into houses. You've seen in Florence, they broke into the Dollar Generals. They just, people will react in such a it's almost like they really show their animalistic behaviors during a natural disaster. If they're not of a good person, you're going to see their real side in a natural disaster of any level. And so now you've got that on a national scale. And you've got honestly, I would not want to be in the president's seat right now, looking over that. I've done it in natural disasters. Like I said, I've been in Katrina. I've been in Florence, right there in Harvey. My mother and I slept in our Suburban right there outside of our warehouse in Harvey, with still armed people around us protecting our warehouse. We had, I don't even want to know how many millions of pounds of supplies was there. We were a very central hub for a large part of Texas there. And then you had Florida with Maria and Irma. We were down there. And understanding what I've seen in these disasters, you've got scam artists, you've got opportunists that will just try to take the supplies and just to sell them. They don't care that the supplies were donated to help people and save lives and protect them and rebuild their house. All they care about is their dollar bills. So now you've got that on a national scale. It's actually much easier logistically if everybody sits still. Unfortunately, it also puts us at a vulnerable spot with natural disaster, hurricane season coming up. And if you don't think we're monitoring that, you're crazy. I know we had one here recently in Arkansas, and a friend of ours, a nonprofit, actually has already sent supplies up there, Arkansas, and he's still got stuff going on in Panama City. We've still got stuff going on in North Carolina for Florence. Thankfully, the governor today actually announced that FEMA is given, they were supposed to start paying this month because they've been in these trailers for about 2 years now since Florence. They were actually supposed to start paying, and FEMA told them they're giving them a 90-day voucher so they don't have to pay for those trailers for 90 days. They're doing a lot of good, and unfortunately, a huge net of things that have to be done simultaneous. And a lot of it was already being done behind the scenes. I kind of touched on the N95 mask. I mean, I knew about the logistics issues with the 95 masks, like I said, about 6 weeks ago. And they just now got the FDA to clear the usage of them. And if you read the news, they're talking about how all these promises came from the president, but they haven't purchased them yet. Yeah, because they had to wait for Congress to approve the funding. If you listen to the funding that was also in this third bill, it was the funding to make those contract purchases. So they had all these ducks lined up, and all they had to do was pay Peter to get everything rolling and unplugged. And of course, we saw the political thing that they tried to pull with that and delayed the money for what, a week and a half, putting us a week and a half behind, well, not really behind, but kind of behind. And again, you know, we got to look at who he's dealing with. What, 4 months ago, they were trying to impeach him with something that if anybody followed it and listened to it, it was bizarre. It made no sense. There wasn't one single thing that they pulled out of their hat that even landed. Most of the time it backfired, right from the guy that was their star witness that said, I don't even know why I'm here today. I didn't tell them that. And then their second star witness said, well, no, I presumed that. I assumed that's what you meant when you said this. Well, is that how he said it? Well, no, he said it like this. But I assumed it meant this. That was me being speculative. That's how the whole thing went, if anybody actually watched it, and it is. I try not to speak on things that I don't investigate, and I'm not willing to learn the truth, and I watch it, spend a lot of hours on it. Why earlier in the week I was unavailable last week, because for 4 days I was watching C-SPAN. If you ever get bored, you should go watch C-SPAN. There's some entertaining moments in there, by the way. Well, go watch C-SPAN and go watch the Congress, go look at the Congress hearings and the Senate hearings and read those bills. It's actually, I'll tell you this, out of every bill I've ever read and investigated in my life, the original bipartisan introductory number 3 bill that went through would have been the cleanest bill I ever seen introduced by any party, ever. Had so few hooks, it would have dropped really fast. That number 4, that bill that they actually passed, is your log jam that everybody keeps asking about. It's the log jam. It's where they give themselves a $25 million, I don't remember the exact numbers, but they give themselves a substantial raise. They threw $25 million to the Kennedy Center that closed its doors and then donated a large sum of the money they got from them. That's the kind of stuff you see out here. The opportunists, they'll take advantage of it. And that's exactly what he's got to deal with. It's just like I told you earlier, my job for oversight and disaster relief. When I hear those call outs, I need help, I need supplies. You know, we have a rule. First, we have to vet and verify those needs and those supplies, because unfortunately you have a lot of sharks in the water that would just like take the supplies and sell it. I mean, they make good money doing it. And then when we first vet and verify it, we go in and we have to ask ourselves, and we align it with 3 specific questions. And it's always one of 3 answers to them. The first one is a lack of communication or a lack of initiative. That means either A, they didn't know where the supplies were and they didn't communicate it and they didn't know how to get to it, or that person with the supplies isn't communicating with them. And then the other one is initiative. The person that had the supplies told them, yeah, bring your truck, come on over and get it. But they wanted you to bring it to them. That's a lack of initiative. That happens. Matter of fact, there's actually a court case with a well-known nonprofit agency down in Florida where the other agencies out of Louisiana, and they were being sued for saying no. And it turned out that they did not say no. They had document to prove. They told the lady, drive 20 miles and we're going to load your semi-truck with all the supplies you can take. And we got everything you need here. And she said, no, I'm not going to do that. Obviously, that lawsuit disappeared. The other answer The other two questions we always ask ourselves: is it mischief? Now, mischief is where I talked about with theft. People taking the supplies, diverting them, whatever. People taking the supplies to sell them. People diverting them because they don't want this religion, that race, that whatever to get them. That does happen. Or three. And three is the most common answer. Media, hype, and lie, which usually have to do with a propaganda campaign. And most of the time, number three is driven by just hate. The answer to why those warehouses were found in Puerto Rico, I strongly suspect number three. The guy that had those warehouses, I think it was 6 or 7 warehouses with thousands of pounds of supplies in them of every different type, from baby food to water bottles to diapers to Band-Aids. That was FEMA funded, had won a FEMA contract through Puerto Rico. I think it's actually called NEMA over there. He was the biggest voice on the internet, on all the social media channels, and on the news. Trump's not sending us any supply. But you have 7 warehouses slapped full of hundreds of thousands of pounds of supply. Obviously, something doesn't add up there. My suspicion on that is media hype and lie. Now, unfortunately, you had a situation I know caught everybody's radar up in Flint, Michigan. That one did not turn out to be any of them 3. That one was purely accidental. A warehouse was not abandoned with good water in it. A warehouse was abandoned because the water was deemed unsafe for use, to be destroyed. And instead of paying to destroy it, they just abandoned the building entirely. Didn't put a hazard sign up or any of that, but the sewage pipe had actually burst and filled the building. Unfortunately, we've never found a workaround that enables us with USDA and FDA to allow us to clean those types of situations up and utilize them when it comes to a food standard. Again, like I talked to you earlier about liabilities and legalities, they're so thick and there's so much red tape when it comes to disaster relief or pandemics or any of that stuff. For instance, if you give me a stroller, a car seat, or like those baby swings, and my nonprofit donates that to another individual, and something happens with that stuff, I'm liable for it. I am liable because, well, we're not supposed to be able to give them out. That's just the way the laws work. We can give it to you for free out the back door, but we cannot donate it as an official agency. That's why getting used car seats and baby furniture and things like that from a nonprofit doesn't exist, because we could be sued. And people are just waiting for us to make one false move so they can sue us. Food bank. Food banks have to go through every ounce of food anybody gives them and make sure that it's up to date. Because if it's not, again, they can be sued. Same thing goes with any nonprofit. When a nonprofit does a donation drive, a lot of the stuff we get is expired. And sadly, we can't use it. We have to throw it away. Now, when you put FEMA in the middle of that, it makes it even more complex because they've got even more regulations on them. So the only one that can really come in, and as Trump has said, we're going to come in and do this for New York and take the liability off of their hands. Because here's another thing I've found out about this stuff in my own local community. If a community leader owns a park and sets up a hospital and something goes awry with that particular temporary hospital, they take the liabilities and the lawsuits for it. That's why a lot of your local communities haven't done it. They wait until the National Guard comes in, and then the National Guard take the liabilities for it and puts the Army Corps of Engineers in charge, and they're the ones that construct these field hospitals. It's about, there's so much liabilities and legalities that that Trump is really trying to remove from the people below him, as well as economical.
Can we go back to the 5G for a second? Because some people are wondering if you're familiar with the concerns of what 5G can do, the health hazards. And I know you mentioned Switzerland and they turned it on. And if you didn't know or didn't mention this about all the birds dying, but then what you said to me, which made a lot of sense, was you talked about kind of the construction of some of these products. And then would you mention how also, or just real quickly, when I said, what about our freedoms earlier, you mentioned to me that a lot of these are just like, they're short term, they're not written in for lasting, that while the CDC might make recommendations and some of our annoying businesses might take those on, the legality side of it is a lot of these things that we're concerned about our freedoms, like how we're going to shop at the grocery store and everything. They're just short term, but some people were wondering if you knew about some of the symptoms of 5G. And I'm going to back this up with, in China, we saw people just dropping dead that probably weren't they weren't having any flu symptoms. They probably didn't have the flu. And it looks like they were dropping dead. It could have been propaganda. It could have been a hoax, or it could have been that they were implementing a 5G of that kind of aspect on purpose. But tell me what you were saying about the level of the kind of 5G you were talking about, like who made it and how well it was made and stuff like that. Uh-oh. Did I lose you? Ah! Hello?
Not sure what happened. We got disconnected there.
Okay. Did you hear what's the last thing you heard?
I heard you talking about the 5G and the inferior quality, and then that a lot of these bills are only temporary.
Right, that we're worried about our freedoms, and because
yes.
And real quick though, I wanted to mention that what you had said earlier to me was that 5G based on who's constructing it and who's like if we saw the 5G that killed all the birds in Sweden, because I said, well, 60 days is long enough to kill a bunch of people. But you said, well, we need to look who's making it. And you mentioned Hawaii at one point. If you just touch on that, because some people were still like, are you aware of what 5G can do? And I mentioned, well, what about 5G causing cancer to those kids? Can you remember we had that conversation?
Yes. Yeah, so first of all, the one thing I noticed with the bills pertaining to 5G is they are only a 60-day usage permit. Every telecom company out there has 60 days that they're able to use the 5G spectrum here. Studying 5G a little bit with some of the people that I know that do a lot with technology and radio, they had mentioned issues with earlier 5G and said that there was a way to filter the harmful whatever it was out of it. And so when we were talking about it, if you look at the countries and the source of the information, most of those countries were using that Chinese, which we can pretty much state they do not have a good track record for high quality construction, anything. And so, I have to ask myself that question. Is the 5G that was killing the birds and causing the cancer and everything else the Huawei Chinese-built 5G? And that's why the other part of the reason, along with the whole encryption key issues and the data privacy issues, that they kicked Huawei out of the United States, and now they're changed it over to this other technology. Because I can tell you, I have 5G right here in Wilmington. And, one thing about me is I'm very empathetic, and I feel a lot of energies. And I've never even knew that we had it here, ever. The only reason I found out about it was one of my drivers was here the other day, and I looked on his phone, and it said 5G on it. And I was like, wait, we have 5G here? And I got looking it up. We've had it here since, I forget the exact date, but it's been at least 6 to 8 months. And nobody has had any major issues. As a matter of fact, we have a very low COVID situation here. It just came out the other day. We may have had our first death. They're investigating it right here in my town. But I have to ask myself, did they kick Huawei out and kick this Chinese technology out for the fact that it was inferior and was going to cause medical issues? Go ahead and allow the nation so that they could stabilize the dependency on the communications so as not to cause everybody to go into panic because now they had no phones and, oh my gosh, they cut out our internet, which, I mean, believe me, I wouldn't blame anybody for thinking that. I thought it myself. As you know, I bought a ham radio, kind of wondering how this was going to go out, and then go ahead and just give them a 60-day temporary window to use that higher bandwidth, which is all it actually is, so that they can go ahead and finish researching whatever it is that they're doing with the 5G. Now, I really have to point towards and look at the typical track record with anything that has to do with China. And I also have to look at this. When I go back and I research who posted a lot of anti-5G materials, it came from a magazine, I think it's GIAI, Gaia. Well, when we start looking at who Gaia is, it's like the German Marshall Funding Group, which is a very far left-leaning, owned by Soros and Rothschilds and all these other high elite situations. I got to question the validity of it because, well, when you start researching what they have, they also have a lot of investments in Huawei. So I have to ask, were they causing this disruption or this divisiveness just to try to win and make themselves look better and keep the Huawei stuff here, which I think we could all definitely see issues with China owning our own communications platform.
Yeah, so that made sense to me. I actually agreed with what you said because when you look at, we don't know who produced that 5G poll that was going in by those kids' school, and we have to look at this from a standpoint of both sides because I can get emotional and I just start to go, well, 5G is dangerous on all accounts, but you've been the voice of reason for me even just today in multiple instances, and you said we have to look at who's manufacturing these. And like you said, we've been in bed with China and Huawei for so long, and now we're seeing that this is a time to kind of pull away from these things. And you're right, the Gaia report, Gaia, I mean, come on, that's all you got to look at. Of course, they're trying to act like they're holistic, because they're about Mother Earth, but they're called Gaia, for goodness sake, and that's a satanic New Age thing. And so, like you did, and I didn't do, and a lot of us probably didn't do, is research, well, who is this Gaia report, and who's behind it? And you did that only to find that, of course, the same satanic people are behind it. That's not to say we're pushing 5G. We're supposed to say that we're saying it's all fine. What we're saying is there's a possibility that certain manufacturers would purposely give us dangerous 5G wavelengths that we can't control, and that would cause some of these symptoms. And we know if we look at Wuhan, they had protests going against something. I can't remember. I had the article that I posted, but they had major protests going on just in 2019, and there was thousands of people protesting in a China province. So it's not surprising that they might turn on the 5G that just isn't that good for you. Come on, guys. China doesn't care if they kill a bunch of people. The elites don't care if they kill a bunch of people. In fact, that'd be just fine for them. And so we can go into this going, well, they're just trying to turn on 5G and kill us all. Well, what are you going to do about it? Because I'm sitting there going, well, I have a 5G router in my house, and I kind of don't want to get rid of it. And here's why. Because I do YouTube videos, and the internet has been real difficult since this shutdown has happened, and we've been seeing a lot of streaming issues, and this is part of how I make money, and you guys know that. And so I'm thinking, what do I do? And I'm just like, I don't know, like maybe I just wait it out and see, because clearly I pray the full protection, no weapon formed against me will prosper. Do we not have the faith, Lord, of the Lord Jesus Christ in our lives, where we can say, hey, I'm going to be protected not on stupid things. If I need to get rid of the 5G and the Lord tells me to get rid of the 5G router, I'm going to do it. But we have to have faith in the Lord, not buy into things excessively, but it's keeping me afloat. It's helping me earn income along with what the other things that I do with the gold and silver, which really is my main income. And business is good in the gold and silver world. but I'm getting back to where I have to be in my faith and my understanding, and that I didn't buy it so that I could have the best of the best. I didn't know I bought a 5G router, but I was told it would be better to have this kind of router. Didn't think anything of it. Realized it was 5G just a few days ago, and I didn't think about it. But I don't have headaches. I'm not sensitive to it. Some people might be, and my negativity lately is definitely what's going on around me and my mood. It's not because of they are 5G capable. The routers are 5G capable. I understand that it seems different, but they're able to take that 5G capability in the future. If they turn on that Wi-Fi, my router is capable of handling it. Point is that we want to talk about some of the positive aspects of what's going on, because it's so easy to focus on the bad. We're not saying nothing bad is going on, but there are some positive things to look at in this quarantine that we need to think about. And you brought up some good ones, Nick. So if you'll, just tell me what's been positive for you in this and how you've seen this, how we can work this for better instead of being angry and frustrated. And it's okay to be frustrated, guys, but let's only do that for a little while and come back to this. It's our time to shine as Christians. It's our time to repent and reflect. So anyway, Nick, tell me what you've been doing. I know you kind of mentioned it, but this is such a good point of focus to end off on the positive aspects of this shutdown.
Well, I told you about Florence, and ever since I got done with our Florence deployment, which was very expensive and very mentally and spiritually draining. It was about 9.5 months. Meetings, just so much stuff to do there. It's a 24-hour job when you're involved in these things. And that was just 9 months during recovery. We'd also been engaged a month prior with preparation, preparedness, education, getting ourselves prepared, etc. When I got done with that, I kind of came back to the house and I worked a lot less. I'm in a very blessed position, and we had a pretty good stride. I worked a lot less, and I spent a lot more time at the house, and I began to see things a lot differently. And I told you I used to be a major workaholic. I mean, I own a business that I built from the ground up. I literally worked 6-7 days a week, anywhere between 12 and 20 hours a day, just to get where I've got. And I realized how much I'd sacrificed, both in from the point of the deployment of Florence all the way back to all those hours that I worked. So I've tried to, spend a lot more time with my family and appreciate them a lot more, and tried to make long-term goals that I hadn't made before. And, I kind of touched on earlier, too. I was talking about Joel Osteen. They were talking about, he came up in the news the other day that he shut his service down and he went just internet. 445 or something like that, 1,000 Americans tuned in and watched him. Why? Because they're at home. They're seeking. They're looking. Now is the time to really, both us and them, for everybody, to kind of like become smaller and then, really become grounded and become much closer to God, where we should be already, and become a lot more focused on others and helping them get to that point. If we sit here and we worry, I mean, the word tells us, be not of this world. That's very important. If all we're doing is focusing on what everybody else is doing, the chaoses of the world, where are we going to be, and how are we going to be any different?
That's exactly right. And we're not supposed to be afraid of anything, and we're supposed to continue working like this is not the end days. But you mentioned even the churches, and it's easy for me to just get mad and tell my church how disappointed I am, and they should be reaching out. And if they're not, okay, so we should, because we are a church too, of people, of a community of believers, and we're doing that. We're reaching out. But so cool to see that some of the channels are getting these group. At first, I'm frustrated because I'm like, the churches shouldn't close. And I still believe that, because I say, where's the faith? Because I'm going to bring up the Catholics for real. The Catholics will say, We can drink out of the same glass. They drink out of the same glass when it comes to the wine, you guys. Every single mass. They drink out of the same glass because they feel like they're protected in the house of the Lord. And I always believed that when I was Catholic, and I did it. But now that this is going on, shut down, shut down. You know, they're just shutting their doors left and right, even people who don't do that. And I'm saying, where's the faith? But instead of getting mad, I need to say, this is so neat that people are doing what they can to get together virtually and having prayer services and saying, how can I pray for you? And instead of getting mad, I need to just, we've got to be this is our time to shine. This is our time to say, hey guys, we love that we have this time together that we didn't have, and it stinks for some people, and we'll pray for you in that. We can pray for each other even more now, and I think that's what I should probably start doing, is asking for more prayer requests. And not everybody wants to jump up with their prayer requests. I'll tell you, it's interesting. People don't always want to tell you, but I think the more we do that, the more opportunity we give people, the more they're going to take it and say, yeah, I would like you to pray for me in this or pray for me in that. And that's what we should be doing, right? Shouldn't we be? And we should be repenting and reflecting, like you said we both said those words earlier. I said repent, you said reflect. We should be turning. Tell them what you said earlier about that. What should we be turning around in our lives right now? What should we be changing about something, right? Shouldn't we be? It wasn't working.
Well, there's always something there. We're not supposed to go back to our past to where we were, but to reflect and look at our past and then figure out how we could have done that better. That's great. And then repent from the marks that we missed, the things that we didn't do right. And how could we do those better to be stronger for the future? And then share that with our neighbors and digitally and our physical neighbors, and move forward in life. Not go back to where we were. What's it been, 35 days now?
I don't even
Not
sure.
go back to where we were 30 days ago.
Of all people, I shouldn't be complaining, because the only really big difference in my life is that I don't get to go to the gym. But I didn't used to even like going to the gym, and I only worked out at home. And I have all these workout videos, and no, they're not VHS. They're actually, they're actually like, oh gosh, I have a PlayStation 4, but that I play. But anyway, they still work. They're great. And they got me really fit at one point. I'm a pretty fit person. Before I was just a runner, and I was still fit as a runner. And I bring this up for a reason, guys. This is one of my pros. I bring this up for a reason. I was a runner, and I only ever worked out alone. Did not run with people, unless sweat into the 80s. But I went and I joined the gym for the first time in decades, because I only ran on my own. And I was a competitive runner for a long time. Long story, I won't get into it. But I joined the gym, and I'm lifting weights, and I have this mean look on my face, like, don't talk to me. Well, then a friend gets me into group exercise, this boot camp class, and I grow to love it, right? But I still always have that look on my face, like, don't talk to me, and I wear headphones. Well, a lot of that is because I need Christian music in my ears. I can't listen to what they're listening to. But I've come to know a lot of these people, and they've become like a community for me of Christians, and I even started a Bible study with some of them. So I was even more upset when the gym closed, and I'm like, now I've got to work out at home again. That's all I ever wanted to do for like 20 years. And it's kind of like I said with this social distancing thing. I don't enjoy getting in people's space, and now all of a sudden I want to. Well, maybe I could just do it politely instead of being a jerk and be like, I'm going to walk up in your 6 feet and be a jerk. I can just be nicer and smile at people and make eye contact, and instead of having that look on my face, and be okay with working out from home, because that's what I did for so long. So my pros are, I'm kind of used to what we're already doing, having my kids home. I already work from home or wherever I'm at. Really not much has changed for me. So where does all the frustration come from? It's because I just, I'm entitled. I'm so used to my entitlement. It's time to let go of the entitlement, and we have to remember that our rights are not our own, and we belong to the Lord. And this is a time to change things, change our attitudes, change our mindset, and maybe even some physical things. And like Colodro said in the chat, this is a new platform for some churches. Maybe like, what did you say earlier about the churches? You said earlier about the online church.
So Joel Osteen, we all know him. He's got a mega church. He was one of the first ones to shut his doors and go virtual. And he said that he had record-breaking numbers on his first virtual service. 440-some thousand American citizens watched his service. And if you think about that, let's say a quarter of them are new people. That's 100 and some thousand people that may have never or haven't heard the word in a long time. And by the way, don't beat yourself up for wanting to rebel against those social distance rules. That's what I was going to say earlier. I put a post out earlier this week because it kind of came across to me funny. A lot of people that were already introverts are wanting to actually rebel. You know, the antisocial people are wanting to rebel and go be social now.
Right.
Because of that reaction that you see on social media and on the internet. Most people are just like, oh, I can't believe I've been told no. Like, what in the world is going on?
Yeah.
And so now, like, people that normally would just stay home and chill, they want to go out.
Right? Yeah, but when you tell us you can't do something, if you're rebellious at all, you're like, you can tell me I can't do that. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. And I'm going to do it like hardcore. I mean, it's just silly. And it's a lose-lose, but yeah. Yeah.
You know, and like I said, I understand it. I get it entirely. Being somebody that has been, you know, a freedom fighter, somebody that fought for justice for as many years as I have, and somebody who's always been a truth warrior. I mean, whether you like it or not, I'm going to tell you the truth. And yes, that's gotten me in trouble a few times. It's hard for me to sit here at my house and literally tell everybody I know who goes headfirst into every disaster that I feel the best thing to do is just sit back right now. We all feel helpless.
Yeah.
We're normally the helpers that everybody's talking about. We're normally the ones coming in with all this gear, you know, ready to save the world. And it's like, all right, we got to just stay home.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also, you know, I understand for those of you concerned about money and finances, I get it. As I told Aaron earlier, you know, I've got a large amount of debt with my transportation business, and I haven't had an income for over 3 weeks. But again, I prayed over the whole thing, like, Lord, just show me. And I'll tell you this, it's funny because that moment, like that mental breaking moment when I hit it, I get a call from a bank, hey, we're going to defer this loan for you. And there was one bank that I was struggling with, and I was like, Lord, that's a large chunk of money to come up with for the next couple of months here, you know, come on. And literally last night at like 9, 10 o'clock at night, I got the email, and they're going to accept my deferral.
Oh, yes.
So that was, you get to that edge, and then it's like, okay, here you go.
Yeah. Oh, my kids are trying to interrupt. Hold on just a second. I'm almost done, kids. And then I know. Okay, we got a question. Hold on. It must be very important. Ask.
Is it still March or May?
It's not March or May. It's April 2nd.
Okay. It does feel like a long March, though.
Yeah. Okay, shh. Quiet now. Okay, so anyway, we've got this chance to repent, reflect, renew, and again, I will tell you guys, if anyone's looking for money, my business has been soaring. I look to make $1,000 this week, and I'm not saying that to be boastful because everybody's going to go, really? Why are you complaining then? Exactly. I shouldn't be complaining because businesses...
We might have to talk after this.
What's that?
We might have to talk after this about that.
Yeah, well, I'd be fine with me because the point is it's one of those things where it might just be hitting for no other reason than, you know, people are just, okay, it's hard to explain because sometimes quiet please, sometimes I just do, things go well for no other reason than good luck or God's blessings or whatever. And that could be really what's going on. But again, I've had a few people come to me go, I shouldn't have waited. I think I need to do this now. I think I need to get into this now. I think I shouldn't have waited. And I had a guy message me that yesterday. I took a screenshot of it. I didn't share it publicly, but I showed my dad because my dad's in the business with me. I said, look at this. This guy just messaged me yesterday. He goes, I think I need to know about silver now. I'm like, yeah, you do. So the cool thing is I'm not selling a gimmick. I'm not selling like anything other than the idea of understanding real money, and that's so exciting. And I'm going to say Rockman is sharing his web page. That's fine because he's in the same business as me, and whatever he does works for me. It doesn't have to be through me. That's the really other cool thing about this is Space Shot got on board, Red Pill 78 got on board. I mean, it's amazing. I never thought 2 years ago when I just started my YouTube channel as a person that listened to these people because I respected what they had to say. They're good at covering the truth, that they would ever get signed up in my business with me. Never did I. I've been doing this for 3 years. And when I first started, I didn't have a clue about what the truth was. I was asleep. But it was this business of gold and silver that taught me the truth. It got me started on that train. I started learning about the truth about money. And then pretty soon I'm like, whoa, like I started learning about the truth about everything else. But God really led me down the truth. And I'm telling you guys, business has been good for me. And so I shouldn't be complaining, but only because this is a product that has been money for 5,000 years and it's got a 5,000 year track record. So that's why I'm saying this. I would never ever push. You guys, I'm also involved in a skincare product. I would never push that on you on a time like this, but I will push gold and silver because it's real money and it can help you in these times of disasters. Now, you say, well, it's not going to help me if the dollar goes to zero and we're living in a time like, The Walking Dead. And I'm like, it might not. But if you look at Venezuela, they're having a disaster in Venezuela, not everywhere else. If I went down to Venezuela and I offered some people some silver dimes, they would know to take it. They would use it to get the heck out of there. And then they could buy food and stuff with it. And yes, there's 11 states in the United States that you can use gold and silver as legal tender. So this is not just some kind of gimmick. It is real money. The banks know it's real money. The central banks know it's real money. And the bank of all banks in Basel, Switzerland, definitely knows it's real money. And that's why they've stuck it down on a tier 3. I'm not going to get into it. It's confusing. I'm going to bore you guys. I could go on and on. But I just wanted to say that I have nothing to complain about. And I could probably help more people, and this is how I'm going to do it. So with that, is there anything that I covered my notes that I took about what we were going to talk about. Is there anything that you felt like we didn't touch on, Nick?
I think we covered everything. Was there any other questions that anybody in the chat had?
I haven't really been paying attention as well as I should have, but I don't think so. But one of the questions was about 5G. Because, but I think we touched on that again because I said mentioning the manufacturers and everything. And I'll only touch on it one more time to say we don't know the dangers to the extent that they could be, but we also don't know how we might be protected from it because we all aren't 5G specialists. And I have friends that are on both sides of the fence, so I think it's healthy to be on both sides of the fence mentally until we start actually seeing people drop dead in the streets from it. And then it's time to say, okay, let's tear the 5G towers down. What do you say to that?
I'll tell you the one thing I am going to do after this, because I don't like to speak on anything, as I said, unless I do the research. I am going to buy myself a Geiger meter, and I meant to do it before the storm hit, as I call it. But I failed to do that before, and now you can't get one to save your life. I'll be checking that out afterwards and seeing if I pick up anything odd in this area. I'll definitely share what I learned with you as I do that, because I'm in a very populated city, so there's a lot of towers here, a lot.
Somebody does have one more question. Yeah. Are you aware of what 60 gigahertz, the effect that they can have on oxygen? And that's why we're seeing some of these people in China that look like they're just keeling over and having pneumonia symptoms, because it can actually deplete your oxygen from traveling. It depletes the iron. I don't remember the.
I understand what people say it does. As far as the data showing that it does, I have not been able to come up with a solid lead on the data. The only source I could find, again, goes back to that Gaia. And to me, if it was so dangerous, why would a news group talking against it have money invested in it in the Chinese company? and not have a very solid track record. That's where I have some issues with the quote unquote data or science that comes from that. And let me tell you too about sound waves and things. You're talking to somebody who is very aware of, and I don't remember the time frame, but the whole situation with the military ship that the Navy accidentally made disappear for a moment. And it didn't end very well with the people. So I do understand the concerns 100% there. I don't know the megahertz on what, or the hertz or whatever it was that they were able to do that with that ship. I know the guy that told me about it that was involved in that project did not know. He just knew what they were trying to do, and that a team of his, because he was in the Navy at the time, and a sister team of his basically stole his idea and was able to do it. But after he's seen the results, he was like, I wasn't taking credit for that anyway. I'm glad it wasn't me. So I do understand the dangers of sound waves and megahertz, etc. I also understand certain tones can have adverse reactions on the body. There is literally a brown note, in case anybody ever questioned that. There is a sound wave out there that if you hit it just right, it'll cause bowel movement. There's also another megahertz, and there's a way to explode a glass jar. Some people may have seen the YouTube video where a husband and wife are playing with two phones and tapping on a glass jar, trying to catch the exact megahertz. And then he turns the volume up on his phone and he holds it above it, and it shatters in her hands. I understand that entirely. What I can't do, though, with this particular research is I can't find a quality source of data on it. That's what I can't do. What I can do is I can talk to people I know overseas in the military that have been around it for a length of time, that up until this event, they had no issues. And it wasn't like the event just occurred overnight, and it didn't occur on a massive level. Some areas in the military bases that have had 5G for a long time don't even have signs of any illness. Specifically, the one in South Korea that I made mention of, nobody on that base, to my knowledge to this date, has fallen ill. So I can't find the actual quality source of data that would let me believe that that could be 100% accurate and truthful, if that makes sense.
Well, the reason I agreed with you about what you were saying about the quality of the manufacturer was when we were looking at what's happening in Wuhan, it's easy to think that they have a 5G that they could turn on that would do that, and they might have a 5G that doesn't do that. Because we know it killed all those birds, but at the same time, it didn't kill any people when they turned that on. It didn't drop dead a bunch of people. It killed a lot of birds, but it didn't drop dead a bunch of people, and that was in a city. So I'm not saying it's not harmful. I would never say that. I'm saying we really just don't know if it can be made not harmful or not. We just don't know. And I'm not talking that cereal brain tube gematria crap and that the good chemtrails are happening. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about real stuff.
No, what I've been told by a guy that is old school radio technology, and just to make you guys kind of understand something, I just learned this recently. Cellular internet is 800 megahertz, okay? It's in the 800 megahertz bandwidth. So when I explain this, it might make a little bit of sense. That wave, they used to call it white noise. That's why it's called, nicknamed the spectrum. So it's called white, and he said the only way I could really explain is white space or white noise wave that they're using. And he said that there's a way to filter it I didn't quite understand all the technology behind what he was saying. Like I said, this guy's an old school radio guy. He's had his own radio station before technology was even anywhere near what it is today. But he was saying that when I mentioned it to him, and I said, they kicked Huawei out, and I mentioned to him the quality of China, and he said, I had heard that there was a way to filter it to do something. And he goes, I wonder if that's what they're doing, is installing these filters. Now, the other thing that I know in this area, there's something to do with the way the fiber optics transfer data that is being changed for our standard cable internet that's in this area. That's the one thing I know. It's somehow it's coupling the fiber optic. The guy didn't exactly understand exactly what they were doing, but he said it's basically coupling the fiber optic system to transfer it. He said it's just a little filter thing that they're putting into it, basically. And it changes the way that the light goes through the lines for the internet. I'd be interested. I meant to do a bandwidth speed check to see if they give us any more bandwidth. Somehow I doubt it. But there's something there. I don't know if you guys remember early on when Trump started, when he ended something to do with the data thing, that all the internet companies had like a magical outing overnight, and they had to change filters, and it was the way they were regulating the internet and throttling it. There's definitely a lot of bad technologies that have been put into our communications that have done things negatively. My thoughts on this is really look at the source of the information and look at the quality of the manufacturer there. We know China has no patents, no respect for people, no respect for information sharing. We know that there's some kind of, we'll call it turmoil there, where the United States government took out their satellites that were above our nation because of whatever reason. That's the whole reason he started the Space Force. If you look at it like this too, on a lower level, it doesn't make sense with Trump's history to all of a sudden stop the bus and run us over. Because essentially that's what he's done. His entire race has been, his entire term has been give American jobs and give Americans freedom. If you look at the end results of everything that's been done, and then all of a sudden he has to hit the e-brake and literally run us over with the bus, because that's basically what's going on today. If you look at that, it doesn't even make sense as to, okay, well, I'm just going to do this to put the 5G in and kill out a mass population of the United States, when that doesn't even, I can't believe that, because it just doesn't make sense with his history and with what aligned with what he's been doing. It's the same reason I can't believe that, or I have a really hard time believing that China was putting out a good quality 5G radio. As I explained with the JAR, they had to go up and down on the megahertz. Who's to say that the 5G China was putting out was even 60 hertz? Maybe it was more.
Right. That's a good
and
point.
Maybe that was the issue.
That's a good point.
Like I said with the Bofang radios, the Bofang radios were supposed to be 5 watts. They weren't even measuring at 3 and 4 if they were lucky. And then they tried to sell one that was a 10 watt that wasn't even measuring at a 5. Who's to say what that megahertz was? Maybe it was even lower than 60 hertz, and that was the real problem. When they exploded that jar today, they had to go up and down on the megahertz a few times to find the exact tone. I don't know, how close they were actually to 60 hertz. I don't know if anybody actually was able to truly measure what that 5G signal was. I have to really think that whatever was going on there with China was probably more a bad quality system in general.
I think that's the best answer I've heard to date. And the reason I'm saying that is not because you've convinced me, sir, with your wit and charm, but because it makes sense. It makes, as soon as you said it, it just clicked for me, and I was like, you know what? I never thought to ask that question. I never thought to ask who's making this. I never thought to ask if they're turning it up higher than we think. And that's a good question. Yeah, maybe the guy I report and a few other people are putting out what the symptoms are, and they could be right, because it takes 99 truths to sell that one big lie, right? But they could be right on some aspects. But again, some of this stuff we just can't, if we have no control, let's just say, we don't have a lot of control over these 5G things being put up anyway, well, I guess we just kind of got to wait and see in some ways. And I hate to say that, but it's like, I don't know how else to say it, because I'm not saying it's cool, trust the plan, like let's wait and see. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is we don't have a lot of control on what is being put up around us, and some people don't even know what it is. A lot of people don't even know what that looks like, and some of us think we do. And you guys, I've looked at some of these sometimes and I'm like, is that a 5G tower? Like, how do I know? And what if I went and started vandalizing it and trying to tear it down and I get arrested and it wasn't like a 5G tower? I'm just saying, I literally don't have the knowledge to know if that's what's going up around me or not. And you could try to teach me, and I'd love to learn, but I don't know. Sometimes I get to a point where I'm just like, no weapon formed against me will prosper. Put on the full armor. Let's put our faith back in God and some of these things, because there's so much out of our physical control, if that makes sense.
No, I have to agree with you there entirely. I think that's the most important thing to do. And you were talking about no weapon formed against me will ever prosper. I'll leave you with a quick story. I lived in California, Northern California, and I went to a ministry outreach in Los Angeles. And I was in MacArthur Park, which, if anybody knows what MacArthur Park is, it's literally like the center focal point of gang wars. There's all these gangs, and that's like their territory. They have certain parts of the park marked as you don't go in this corner because it belongs to this gang, etc. And I was down there with the Los Angeles Dream Center, and we were standing in the middle, and we were serving the homeless meals, and we were praying for them, and we were giving them food that would, substantial food that would keep them sustained for about a week. And about, a couple hours into this event that we were at, there was just this massive swarm of police. I don't think I've ever in my life seen that many police come rushing into an area. Bicycle cops, motorcycle cops, helicopters, police cars, and you name it. They're all over the place. There was literally a shooting 10 feet from where I was standing. And this, if you ever go look up the history on MacArthur Park, it's bizarre. It's like, I don't understand why it's such an important part of that gang activity, but it truly is like a center focal point for Los Angeles gang activity. And here I am 10 feet away. There's a shooting that didn't even scathe any of us. It didn't even come near us. But, there's been countless times in my life that's been the case. Another one here more recently. About 4 years ago, I was driving in cab, and I got myself in a situation. Somebody got my driver's door open, pointed a gun at me, and went pull the trigger. The gun jammed. No weapon formed against you can truly prosper. The faith in God is really a lot more strong than people give credit.
That's right. That's absolutely right. And that's why some of my frustration has been a little over the top, and I'm dialing it down now because I have to focus on myself, not everybody else. I can't be the Holy Spirit for other people. I can only let the Holy Spirit work in my life and be that protection. So, I always ask my guests if I like to close out in prayer. I'm happy to pray, but if I have a guest, I always ask them if they would like to or wouldn't mind. Anyway, I offer that to you if you would like to close us out in prayer. Otherwise, I will.
I'll let you.
Great. Go ahead and whenever you're ready. Did you say you wanted me to, or that? Did I lose you again?
No, I'm back. I think my Bluetooth is dying. Okay. I said, I'll let you say the prayer.
You said that you would, or you would like me to?
I'd like you to.
Oh, I'm going to so if you want us both to pray, which is something some people do, that's fine. I can start and you can finish, or what do you think?
Yeah, I'll let you go ahead and start.
All right, I'll start. I appreciate you being a part of this. So let us, let's bow our heads, close our eyes. Lord Jesus, this is a really great thing because you come first more and more in our lives when we focus on you. And that's what we're supposed to do, is worship your holy name. We love you first. We want this relationship with you first. And your name is holy. You are holy. You are a creator. And we acknowledge that. And we thank you for that. I'm so grateful for this community. I say that, and I truly mean it, because people like Nick, he could have heard my frustrations and not been willing to see it through, and I'm really grateful that he has. But I'm also grateful on my end that I have too, Lord. I don't just walk away from arguments anymore like I used to, or disagreements even. I see them through, and I'm so grateful because we're growing that way. We don't learn when we want to prove ourselves right. We don't learn when we're ready to listen and not just wait to speak. We learn when we're ready to listen and learn something from other people, even when we don't like what we hear. Sometimes we are wrong, Lord. And thank you for this community of people that are willing to correct me and let me come to them in correction. What a cool thing that we've created. We're so blessed. I'm so grateful. I pray protection over us with the full armor of God, putting on first the belt of truth, the breastplate of righteousness, the shoes that are the gospel of peace, the sword of the Spirit that is the word of God, the shield of faith, and the helmet of salvation, putting a force field over us, Lord, that while things that are not from you might come near us, they cannot penetrate. And we go out to battle next to you at our side, and we gladly do so. And we want to have this relationship with you first. Let us repent in these times. Let us turn from what we need to change and make new. This is so different. Nothing will ever be the same after this. Let us do better because of it, not complain and be of ourselves. Less me and more you, Lord. Amen.
Amen. Father, I thank you for giving us this platform to reach others on. And I pray, Lord, that you would make us a beacon of light, of hope, and a voice for your words. I pray, Lord, that you would lead us and guide us in your ways and what you would have us to do. And I pray, Lord, that you would give peace to all those that are here tonight that hear this, and understanding and guidance. And I pray, Lord, that we would continue to lean on you and your words and wisdom, and not our own understanding, not man's understanding. And Lord, I pray that you would bless each and everybody tonight with peace, with comfort, and I pray that everybody has food and everything that they need. And I thank you for all of the blessings, for our health, and for our well-being. Amen.
Amen. Thank you for coming on with your very good amount of information that you have, which is obviously a lot, and we just barely scratched the surface. So in that aspect, would you be willing to come on again sometime?
Oh, yes, absolutely. It'd be my pleasure.
All right. Well, I'm going to let you get on with your night, and I've got 2 children I got to get to bed, so I'm going to get on with mine. And again, thank you for being here. Thank you for being my friend, and thank you for answering questions that a lot of people wouldn't have answered for me.
Absolutely, and I'm glad that I could be here, and please feel free to ask anything, and that goes for everybody. Anytime anybody wants to ask a question, feel free. If I don't know the answer, I will do my best to find it. And if I can't, I will just tell you I don't know.
Well, one more question. There are a lot of people here that are on the Discord. Is it okay if they reach you through Discord, or is that someplace you'd rather not email, something like that?
Yeah, they can. Yeah, absolutely. They can absolutely reach out to me on Discord.
So do you mind then if we give them your Discord name? Did I lose you again? Okay. Well, he is on Discord, and he'll let us know on Discord that we can talk to him and ask him questions. So with that, guys, I am going to go on and put my kids to bed. Peace and love of the Lord. God bless you. And be at peace. And repent, but be at peace. All right. Good night, guys.
Destiny Lab, Deacon Frost.
Our design is the kind you find, and keep in mind, divine is on his name on the dotted line. Time is not a factor, supernatural acts react just like a nuclear reactor. Chemical reactions, earthquakes and shake that break apart, start volcanic eruptions, Genesis explosion. Big Bang explain these things, explanation evolution, confused by conclusions. Notions preconceived and imitation will cause an illusion, forget the foundation. Compromise my lies, you pick and choose your own way to salvation. Who are we praising? What trailblazers fighting for the truth through the proof of creation.
Yeah, Mr. Evolution Scientist, I've got a question. How do you explain the obvious design that is so apparent within nature?
What design?
What design?
There's no room for a creator in today's age of the Big Bang and 16 billion years of evolution.
College professors make investments in scientific. It's so convenient to overlook spiritual specific. It's all speculation about God's creation, unfounded illustration. Sometimes they're wondering about where we come from, where we going. Reject our destiny from the fear of knowing, or accepting facts beyond comprehension. When it comes to God, they won't stop and mention the possibilities of a single creator. Deny that he's your father like his name was Darth Vader. Persuasions become more like invasions and stealthy, supporting the causes of the rich and the wealthy, purchasing a theory to exempt them from judgment, spinning their agenda more straight in the dungeon. When it comes to me, there's no creation debate, and if there is, I'll be the first monkey to enter the gates.
Okay, let me get this straight, man.
Okay.
You don't see any design or structure within nature?
No.
I mean, where do you think we get our ideas from?
From us.
We take everything from the earth. Nothing is man-made. I mean, who do you think was the original artist, bro?
No, Andy Warhol.
Mindsets reset with upper band style like this, equipped with significant to intellect. Who do you trust, the word of man? Battle lines are drawn, on which side do you stand? Do you see who on the fence is stuff too deep? It don't make sense, so we take the evidence to the street. Repeat it confidently. All damn seas swing the sword of truth. Speak lines elementary, studying up in chemistry. But common sense is all we need to see the monkey up the sleeve. Swayed by agendas, and they defend the lies to the truth. But the evidence is endless, proof like a chemist. You can't fool the facts, I love creation, verify the presence.
Okay, so you don't think that the theory of evolution has a negative impact on our society?
No.
When we're telling our children that we're meaningless, we have no purpose, there is no right or wrong.
Yeah.
You can do whatever feels good.
That's
We're all
right.
just a bunch of grown-up animals.
That's
Come
right.
on, wake up.
What?
visions of evolution that dance in your brains. 7-day creation, not a fairy tale page. Separate the nonsense and clear your conscience and generate a healthy understanding of the process. We stand to be refuted or to show a solution. Delusions are conceived with the theory of illusion. Walk in the shoes of a madman defiance. Change your tune to a man-made science. Stars aligned in the form of a lion. Signal seen as they point to Mount Zion. Our design in the land of the lost. Destiny lab and my man Deacon Frost. Put your hands up and pull your pants up. Move like ants until your legs start to cramp up.
Yo, y'all, don't fall for all these lies about evolution. The truth is that we were created in God's image. And that each one of us was designed with a special reason and divine purpose. Now that's the truth, straight from the original science book,
According to who?
the Bible.